Callum's good at this.
And we're gone. We're started.
Hey, everybody. Jonathan here from AJ&Smart. We don't even know if you can see us live right now, but we're hoping you can. I'm here in my bedroom in Berlin, and I'm here with Tim Höfer. And,
hey, everybody.
Hey, Tim. Oh, your voice is, your mic sounds good. How do I sound? Sound okay?
You sound as great as always. I mean, yeah, you sound good.
Thank you.
Very clear.
So today we're going to be. Yesterday we launched this massive 55-page guide called the Ultimate Guide to Remote Design Sprints. Maybe Tim, you can bring that up on screen for some context. Earlier in the week we launched it for the masterclass students, but we decided rather than having it behind a paywall during this crazy coronavirus thing where everyone's trying to figure out how to actually run remote sprints, we said we'll actually make it free for the public. So yesterday we launched it free for the public, and hopefully a couple of you in the comments or a couple of you watching this actually downloaded it. It's free, and it's one of the biggest, I think, guides we've ever made. It's massive. It's really, really crazy, and the whole team put a massive amount of effort into it. So maybe Callum can kind of put the guide and me on the screen if he can figure out how to do that. But yeah, this was a massive project inside AJ&Smart. For some context, so if you didn't get the guide yet, I think it's ajsmart.com/remote sprints. Callum can maybe correct me if I'm wrong. There'll also be, after the live stream, a link in the description down below here. Oh yeah, there you go. You can now see the full screen version of the document. So we have been running remote design sprints for years, and the reason is just because most of our clients are not based in Berlin, which is where AJ&Smart is based. Most of our clients are actually based in the US, and so we very early on had to start using tools like Miro, which is actually, Tim calls it Miro, I call it Miro, and a lot of people might remember it being called real-time boards about 2 years ago or something like that. So I
think I called it real-time board until end of last year or something like that. I think it's weird because it's I don't know. For some reason I find real-time board to roll a bit easier off the tongue than Miro, just because you don't know how to actually pronounce it. I think that's the biggest issue.
True. Well, I think it's Miro though.
Miro.
Actually, I don't know.
Let's just talk about this the entire duration of the stream.
Exactly. So I know this is a YouTube video, and YouTube videos are supposed to be snappy, but this is also a live stream. So Callum, I don't know, Callum, why don't you just turn on your voice and let us know what's happening in the comments? It doesn't matter if it's all clean and smooth. Who cares? Callum just sent us a link. I don't have a clue what that link is supposed to mean.
Oh, sorry. That's actually for the AJ&Smart live stream. Hang on one second. That's the crowdcast. That's not what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Callum. This is Callum, who you can hear on the other line. Callum is the guy who edits and creates all of our YouTube videos. He does an amazing job on that. So Callum, say hi to the audience.
Hey, everyone. Hey. This is my first live stream on YouTube. Yeah, I've been part of it, which is cool.
We totally know what we're doing. Are people watching the live stream?
Yeah, we have currently 62 in.
Oh, wow.
I'm just trying to jump between browsers without Crowdcast crashing. So
yeah, whatever you're doing with your audio, it's the worst thing ever. Oh, I can hear you're using your MacBook audio, so every time you click, it's a massive bang. Actually, that's what it is.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah, it's really painful. Okay, so the goal of this video here is to run you through. So Callum, tell us, you're going to have to give us some feedback here. Have people read the guide? Do people have the guide?
People are, in the comments, people are downloading the guide. I linked it in the description of the video and the pinned comment. So if anyone wants to access it in real time, you can click on that comment and it'll take you through to the landing page. And so I'll start fielding some questions.
Great. So yeah, let's take some questions, and we'll try to maybe Tim, if there's a question that the guide answers directly, we can bring that up on screen and scroll straight to it. So let's take some questions and let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first questions that's come up is, does the role of facilitator change in a remote sprint? And if so, how?
Should I take this immediately? Yeah. So in a like essentially you're still doing very similar things that you would also do in an in-person workshop. However, you have a bit more responsibility to ensure that.
Sorry, 2 seconds. Callum, can you please mute yourself? All we can hear is these really loud bangs. Thank you. Sorry,
Okay.
Tim.
Yeah, no worries. So I mean, it's still like the role doesn't change significantly. I would say that you just have a bit more. You just have to watch out more for technical issues as well, because you're not in the same. So when you're facilitating a workshop in person with everybody in the room, it's quite easy to get like a feel for the mood in the room, for like the interpersonal dynamics between different participants. You don't have that ability when you're doing it remote. I mean, you usually, so when we are running a remote sprint, we would have people joined via webcam, so we can at least see their faces, but it's still you still like, it's still harder to pick up on certain things. So you have to be a bit more proactive when you're checking in. But I would say the role doesn't change significantly. I mean, it's if you're an experienced in-person facilitator, I think it's quite easy to make the jump, and you shouldn't worry too much about like all the technical issues. I mean, in my opinion, the role can be as easy as doing it in person, provided that you do a bit of preparation in advance.
All right, thanks a lot, Tim. Actually, Callum, I can see the questions now, so it's okay if I'll just choose the questions if that's fine. So if you're watching this live stream, please make sure you're putting the questions in the chat on the right-hand side, and I'm going through them. Tim, you can hear me all right, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so Tim, why do we as AJ&Smart, why do we now start with the map? Like, why do we, I guess one of the first exercises, well, okay, so this is from Genevieve, and the question is, why do we start with the map as the first exercise? And I should maybe just clarify that at AJ&Smart, when the client walks into the room on the Monday, we've already completed a lot of the exercises for them. But technically the map, Tim, you guys kind of play around with it a little bit, right? So it's not always starting with the map. Sometimes it is just with the how might we's. Maybe let's talk about maybe let's rephrase that question is to what do we think is the optimal way to do the morning of the design sprint?
Yeah, I would say it really depends on what you're running the sprint on. In our case, we're like, I would say that 90% of the sprints that we run are in some way related to a product or some kind of process. So in that case, it's actually possible to get an idea of the entire problem space by just mapping out the process first. And usually this also helps people to think about the challenges in regards to that problem space on the map a bit easier than if you just dump them into, hey, write down all the challenges that come to your mind, because like something might come up that has completely unrelated to the challenge, which might be a good approach if you are, for example, an in-house facilitator working at a big corporation and you are maybe working on, you know, all these different innovation projects, and essentially you don't have like a specific brief on a project. It could make sense to just get a feel for like what are actually the challenges that we need to solve, and then you go to the map, because you're kind of like narrowing it down from another perspective, like going from the challenges to the map. But in our case, because we're an agency and we're working with clients who have a pretty good idea usually like in what area the challenge lies. I mean, when like, for example, a financial client, a company comes to us, it's not that they come to us because they want to fix their hiring processes. I mean, they usually have a very specific part of you know, like their product or service that they want to improve or fix, and this is why we are starting the map and look at that in the beginning. And John, you just mentioned that we are usually already preparing all the exercises for the clients. I mean, that is right, but I should also clarify that we are not prescribing anything. I mean, the things that we prepare in advance of the workshop are just almost like covering the basics. So we are really looking at at all the pre-sprint interviews we are doing with the participants. We're looking at all the surveys. We're doing our own research in the week prior before the sprint workshop, and we're just collecting as many challenges as possible so that we don't start with a blank canvas in the workshop, because that's quite scary for clients when they come into a room, everything is empty, and now you tell them, hey, now we're going to start working and you'll have to come up with everything, and don't worry, we'll guide you through the process. I mean, it's just nicer for them to see, great, I mean, all these interviews we've already done, I see my concerns already reflected on these how might we's, and in the end, you can also, of course, then add more in the workshop. So that's completely fine.
Great. Tim, can you, I know you've already been asked to take the microphone a little bit away from your face. Can you also turn up your input a little bit so that when you're away from your face, we can hear you a bit better? Okay, so I'm going to focus more on remote sprint questions. So for anyone joining right now, yesterday we launched this free guide, the ultimate guide to running remote design sprints. You can download it for free down in the description, and we're sort of using that as a jumping off point. So I have a question from Jessica Ginelli. Hello, Jessica, and I hope I'm saying your name right because it's spelled in a way I've never seen before. All right, guys, I want to know if you've ever worked with banks or companies who have a very blocked workspace, for example, VPN access. How do we deal with clients who cannot necessarily use the tools we want to use, Tim?
Yeah.
We've had this a lot, right?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you too good.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, we had that. We had things like that happen. Definitely, it's when that happens, it's always complicating things, but in the end, you find a way. I mean, in our case, we had several clients from the financial sector where, for whatever reason, we just couldn't use specific tools. It was just not possible to do it. Interestingly, it was always fine to use the digital whiteboards. So that was never an issue. And I think usually, I mean, the good thing is, because there are so many tools out there already, it's quite easy to find a workaround. If you're working with a client and you realize that tool that you really that you really like using is not an option anymore, you can just use something else. I mean, it's definitely complicating things, but it's not a huge problem, I would say. This is why I think preparing well in advance is so important, so that when you realize that, oh, I cannot use my templates anymore, you can just quickly find another solution for that.
Yeah, great. Okay, so by the way, a lot of people are asking onboarding questions, and if you have the guide that we're now speaking about, all you need to do is jump to page 12, and there's an entire section on onboarding clients for a remote design sprint. So that's page 12 of the Ultimate Guide. Okay, so a lot of people have the same question, and Tim, the question is, when we're running a remote design sprint, and by the way, Callum, we need to get Tim one of these. I have an extra one at home. It stops all the popping noises. So Tim, but whatever, we're just doing it. So Tim, when we're running a remote sprint, when we're running an in-person sprint, the workshop, it's really easy to keep the energy up. But when you're running a remote sprint, a lot of people here are having the problem that they can't keep the energy up and they can't keep people focused on the tasks. What are some things that we do to keep people focused and not just sort of, looking at their phone or wandering off and having a snack? Do we have these? Do we come up against these problems? And when we do, what are some things that we can do to sort them out?
Yeah, sure. That's of course a huge issue in any kind of workshop. I think one of the easiest things you can do is just to restructure the workshop to have more shorter sessions than like having an entire day of remote workshopping, because it's really tiring sitting in front of a computer for eight hours. I think it's a lot to ask of the people who are joining. Of course, you're also, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if you can even make more progress if you just like force people to sit in front of the computer for 8 hours. So now in our case, we're just splitting the workshop days to shorter sessions. So the first session is on day one. It's about 4 hours, going from things like the map, how might we, and we're ending with giving the participants homework. So where they're researching lightning demos, and then the second session is like the creation session, and the third session is again 4 hours of making choices, narrowing down the concepts, and then creating the storyboard. So it's all doable within 4 hours, and I would say 4 hours is almost like the maximum duration of a workshop. So this is already planning for buffer if some exercise is going over time, which will always happen in a workshop. So that already really helps. The other thing is having like really, like, this is again where we have to talk about the onboarding and the preparation a little bit, because you really have to make sure that everyone has the right environment to work in. So this is something that we also like to tell our clients before the workshop starts, to maybe book a conference room or something. It doesn't need to be big, as long as they have proper internet access and they can just sit there in peace and quiet for 3 to 4 hours. That's really great, so that they can focus. We also tell them, if you have your email client open, close it down, put your phone down, like front facing down on the table, whatever. These are all things that you can do. And in the workshop, we usually not run the workshops with just one person facilitating. I mean, we have another person in the workshop who is available to help and also to check if participants are really all paying attention. So if you, as the co-facilitator, you notice that person is definitely not focusing on the workshop right now, I can see them typing something, you can just quickly in Zoom or whatever tool you're using, reach out to them person to person without embarrassing them in front of the group, and just like ask them to come back and switch back to focusing on the workshop.
Tim, could you jump to page 26 of the guide? Just because it's going to answer the question I was going to ask you. So a couple of people are asking, what should the home setup look like? If you go to page 26 of the guide, we've taken a picture of the setup that we recommend for all AJ&Smart employees. This is an external display with Miro, whatever the hell it is called. The Zoom on the MacBook, sticky notes, noise canceling headphones, notepad, and a timer. So that's basically the view from an AJ&Smart employee to their remote setup.
John,
this.
Can I switch to Amar's setup, because I think it's even even better.
Yeah.
So you can see
that's the hardcore one, though.
Yeah, that's definitely the power user setup, but it makes such a big difference. I mean, so the photo that you saw earlier, that was actually my setup from last week, and I adapted it a little bit since then, and it looks a little bit closer to this now. So my colleague Amr has a really good webcam, so you can. It's actually the same one I'm using at the moment, so we're using these throughout AJ&Smart. The other thing is, I think, John, you're using the same, right?
Yeah, we're all using the same ones. And just so you all know, the list of these items is in this guide. So if you're wondering what to buy, you just need to download the guide. Yeah.
So the other thing is, and that's really important, is having this ring light here, because you can have the nicest webcam in the world. It's not going to help you if you're recording in a dungeon, and as John is doing at the moment. So having some really nice light of like illuminating your face. And then also having a proper microphone set up with what is that, like a pop screen? Is it called a pop screen?
Pop filter, right. Yeah.
Pop filter. Yeah. Is it better now? By the way, I'm holding it away from my mouth a bit more.
Yeah, it's much better. By the way, people are still asking just in the chat, how can they get the document? If you just scroll down, I thought it was a pinned thing. I guess, Callum, you're just going to have to keep reposting every few minutes where people can get this document. But it's in the description, or go to ajsmart.com/remote design sprints. And so you can use this document while you're going through the video, because we'll be mentioning pages. All you got to do is click on the link down below, and it's all free. Sorry. Okay, Tim, sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
So, yeah, I mean, this looks like it's a really elaborate setup. And I mean, you definitely, so I should also mention, if you are running your first remote workshop next week, don't stress out about not having any of that stuff. It's fine. I mean, this is really just if you realize that, you know what, I'm probably going to run a lot of these things remote now, and I have some budget to spend on these things. I think it makes, at some point, it will make sense for this, because I mean, you should consider yourself to be the host of the entire workshop, and you are the facilitator, so you have a really important role guiding people. And I think it's just nicer if you have, you know, like if you have a really nice, clear and crisp webcam, and you know, like video, if you have a proper illumination, if you have really good audio, just so that people can properly hear you. And it's fine if the participants don't have that, but you should consider yourself to be the master of ceremony. So I think it makes sense at some point to spend a little bit of money on this if you're planning to do this more often.
It's really great. The Amherst setup is amazing. And what Tim said is right. So if you're running the design sprint for your client, at least you should have a good setup so that you look good on the screen and that everything is kind of in order. Just makes you seem more professional. And especially, you know, the companies we're working for are usually large corporates, and maybe some of them are not really that excited to come in and do a remote sprint. But, you know, at least if we can come across as very professional, it makes everything just feel a bit better. So, okay, I've got number one. Please like this video, and please subscribe to our channel, and please tell people about our YouTube channel. We're pumping out videos every single week here. We're going to be doing a lot more live streams if you like them. And it helps, if you like this video, it helps the YouTube algorithm, you know, that people find these types of videos and find the AJ&Smart account. So please do. We're trying to get to 100,000. If people are always asking, hey, you know, AJ&Smart, you're always giving away so much free stuff. What can we do for you? Honestly, the only thing we want is to get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you can help us get there, we will be forever grateful. Okay, now I have a question. And yes, Callum is in the house. Callum, can you answer Rodrigo's question? Okay. So I only see 28 likes, but there's 100 people watching, but they're going up. I'm happy about that. So Tim, do we ever have issues with people not being tech savvy and having problems using a Miro board? Because a couple of people here are saying, okay, we're trying this with our client, but our client is not tech savvy. I'm worried about them using Miro.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first time we did a remote workshop, actually, we really underestimated that, and it turned out to be a huge headache. And I cringe when I think back about that, because it was just not a good experience for anyone. I think in the end, the workshop was a big success, but it could have just been a way better experience if we had taken the time to properly onboard them. And I think this was a really big learning for us. So since then, that was years ago, we started really taking the preparation and onboarding seriously. And I know that there are like a lot of questions around the entire onboarding process, but there are different aspects to the onboarding. One part is onboarding people to the process. The other part is getting insights and information from them. And the third and also really important part is onboard them to the tech. And this is something that we try to combine in our one-on-one calls with them, where we essentially let them, first of all, access the Miro board. In our case, we're using Miro or Miro, however you want to pronounce that. And then we just ask them to do a couple of very easy to do exercises, nothing too complicated, because essentially, like whatever tool you use, whether it's Mural or Miro or Miro or whatever, a lot of these tools have very powerful features, but the participants don't need most of them. I mean, it's completely fine for them to just understand, okay, this is how I navigate the canvas. This is how I copy a virtual sticky note, and this is how I write something in it. And that's pretty much everything they need. And that's really easy to learn and teach. And this is something that we do always before the workshop. Really, this is really important. I mean, it sounds so like such a small thing to do, but it makes a huge difference in the beginning of the workshop when everybody already knows how to use the tool. People are way less anxious. And it's also easier for you as a facilitator if you don't have to constantly check in, like, oh, hey, Charles, I noticed that you somehow have trouble with like moving the sticky notes around. I mean, you just don't want that to happen in the workshop, because if you have like 8 people joining, you will just constantly doing like impromptu tech support, and you don't want that to happen.
I remember that in our first remote design sprints, and that was extremely embarrassing in front of the client, and it didn't happen again. Okay, so I have a question. Actually, it's not a question, but I'm just going to tell. So Irham K, hello, how are you doing? Is saying, oh man, how the hell am I going to do my user testing remotely? Well, I've got good news for you. Get the document open on page 41. Maybe you can scroll to that, Tim, but we won't go through it. Go to page 41. We've got like 10 full pages on how to recruit the users, the software to use, every single thing you need to know about remote user testing, because actually we don't do any in-person user testing. We only ever do remote testing because our clients are never in Berlin. Our clients are always in another country. But even if they're in Berlin, these days we only allow remote user testing. It just gives us a much bigger group of people to choose from. So page 41 is going to help you out there.
Yeah. I think of the hundreds of sprints we have done, I can count the occasions when we actually had testers coming into the office on like one hand. I mean,
1 foot.
Yeah, it's this is also something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Even when we're running a sprint workshop in person, whether it's at a client's location or in our office, we're always doing the testing remote. And there are some really good reasons for doing it that way. First of all, your pool of testers is just way bigger. You can basically test anywhere in the world, and it's you can pretty much recruit any demographic or target group there is. So it's really something that you should be doing, whether you are running sprints remotely, or if you think that once I have the opportunity again, I will just like go back to in-person sprints all the time. I would really suggest that you look into doing tests remotely, because it's also saving a lot of work, like all the documentation you would have to do. There's so many tools out there that can record your interviews. It's really fun doing it that way as well.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, so a lot of people are asking about the tools we use, and instead of taking up time, page 21 of the Remote Sprint Guide gives you an overview of some of the key tools we're using. There's loads and loads of tools in this document, but these are some of the key tools we're using. We're using Loom to record the screen, so that's for actually having screen recording to send to the client later. We're using Zoom because it's very reliable video conferencing. We're using Basecamp as sort of the center of all communication between us and our client. We're using something called a Miranda time zone app to quickly find time slots that work for everyone when scheduling across time zones. And we use Google Forms, and there's a survey template inside the remote guide as well. So everything related to tools is in the remote guide. What's also in the remote guide is our Miro template that we use with our clients. And actually yesterday, Tim, this might be news to you. Yesterday, we may have figured out a way to share the actual template so that people can duplicate it for themselves. So if you just keep following AJ&Smart's channels, we'll eventually drop our proper copy and pastable Miro template. But for now, if you go to page 20, what page is this? 28 in the document, you can get a direct link to our Miro board that you can use with your clients, which is going to be super, super helpful. Okay, so let me have a look here. For the people just joining, lots of people just joined. Please make sure you like and subscribe. This is a bit of a labor of love at the AJ&Smart, making making live streams and making videos. We love it, but we really want to get to 100K subscribers so that we can get that nice thing from YouTube. This will be great. Okay, so let me have a look here. Oh, what's that? Some questions. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of questions. By the way, I'm flying back through. So if I missed your question, it's likely that I'll come back to it. I'm going back up and down the questions to find something that I want to ask. All right. Tim, do we have? I actually don't know the answer to this question. But are we sharing our Miro template for pre-work, the Sprint Zero? Is there something about that in the document?
Yeah, so it's all the same template, pretty much. So maybe I can just quickly explain for the people who have already accessed the Miro template. So the way we are using this actually internally before we start working with the client is that we are already collecting all the material for each exercise on the board itself. So when the client shows up, joins the Miro board on the first workshop day, it's never empty. Like they never see the empty state of it. They always go to a specific exercise and they can already see that we pre-filled some of these things. And we are always doing that in the same template that we eventually work with.
Tim, what would you say, and this is a question maybe we can both answer, but what would you say for consultants? Oh, sorry. What would you advise organizations or consultants that believe that virtual collaboration is not real collaboration? And then I'm going to add on top of that question, and because you're also sometimes part of the sales process, how do we get over the issue of selling clients remote sprints versus in-person sprints? And I think that's the same thing. Like, how do we get around clients who don't want to do things remotely?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I'll answer the first question first. So I think, yeah, the collaboration thing, I think a lot of companies have a very unclear understanding of like what a remote workshop actually is like. And I think a lot of them have experience with like these horrible group calls and teleconferences where, you know, like people are sitting in a room around like one of these what are they called, like these speaker phones, and then, you know, like it's just frustrating for everyone. So I think what's really important is that this is not like a remote workshop is not a remote meeting. So it is a very different thing to do, and I think
that's good. That's a good soundbite, Tim. I really like that.
And I think and that applies to like in-person workshops as well, right? Like they like some people actually don't know the difference between a meeting and a workshop, because it's also sometimes you call something a workshop that is actually not a workshop. I mean, in my understanding, a workshop always means collaboration, and I think you can. So in a specific case, when you are trying to convince someone to do a remote workshop, what you could do is maybe just show them also how you intend to use the tools, or show them a little demo of how the tools work. Because once you get people to work in a specific tool like Mural or Miro or whatever it is, they will quickly forget that they're actually doing this on like in front of their computer, and that they're not sitting in the same room with everyone, because everything is happening in real time. It's not asynchronous where you're just, you know, sending emails back and forth or something like that. It's all happening in real time. People are not in the same room, but it's still working together in the same document in the same moment. And I think just showing them what they can expect can really help there. The second question, I think, was that the pricing strategy?
So how do we? It's a bit of both. So it's like part A is how do we convince them that we can still do such an important and expensive project remotely?
Yeah, right. I mean, there are a couple of really big advantages of doing it remotely. I mean, the thing is, a lot of, especially corporates, have distributed teams. It's also, I mean, let's also face it, like flying to some location just to join like a 1 day or 2 day workshop. I mean, it's not very sustainable. Like it's neither is it sustainable nor is it like a good investment of time, I would say. I mean, I personally really like doing in-person workshops. It's just that especially when you maybe have already worked with a couple of these people before, it's actually really easy to do it remotely. And I mean, the thing is also, it do we really want to spend so much time and even resources on just getting people in one room when you can have the same result even by just cutting that cost entirely, and also making the planning a lot easier? I mean, it's very like, this is actually one of the key advantages, I would say. I mean, with a remote workshop, you're a lot more flexible in how you get people to join. When you're working with like a team of 10 people, they're all distributed all across the globe. And we've had it happen that the key person just couldn't come. They couldn't join the workshop. They would have been able to maybe do like a half day thing in their city, but they had a really important appointment that day, and we had to plan around for that person for 9 other people. And when you're doing a remote workshop, it's quite easy to just say, you know what, don't worry, you will be done in the afternoon. We can do the entire thing remotely. So it's quite, it's quite a easy approach, doing a workshop like that way.
And to answer people's questions, we charge the exact same amount of money for our kind of hybrid in-person remote workshops versus our completely remote workshops. We don't change the price because the end result is the same, right? The end result is you get a product validated by a skilled team. So we are definitely not dropping our prices just to do remote work. So someone says they sent an email but didn't get a download link. Jeanette James. Jeanette, I don't know why that happened. Maybe check your junk mail. If not, Callum will look into it. Sorry about that. So yeah, if you're just joining, basically, yesterday we launched this massive remote sprint guide. Tim, could you scroll to just the front page, just so that's on the screen? This is a 55-page document which tells you every single secret about how we run remote design sprints with the biggest companies in the world. Every single thing, how to run the user testing, what tools we're using, everything. It's for free. All you got to do is scroll down and wait a second. In the description down below, it's the first link, and it's for free. Usually it came out for the masterclass students a bit earlier, but we decided to make it free. Also, one more thing, if you haven't liked this video yet, please click the like button. I see that there's 58 likes and 120 people watching. Oh, please click the like button. Please click the like button. Please. I can see people clicking the like button, so it seems like singing this song actually works quite well. Also, Callum, who's going to be putting the thumbnail and the name of this video. Callum, make sure that this video doesn't end up being called Live Q&A. We need to give a nice clickbaity title. So what I'm just going to ask in the comments is, what would be a really great clickbait title for this video for when we turn it into a non-live stream, just straight up YouTube video? So thank you for lots of people click the like button there. Thank you. And please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. That really helps our channel get noticed. So yeah, we will, if you give us a good clickbait title, we will choose your title. Okay, back to the questions. Tim, I just wanted to wait till you say what. Tim, how do we do the storyboard in a remote design sprint?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we do the storyboard in pretty much the same way we do it in person. I don't know how familiar people watching are with the AJ&Smart approach to the design sprint. So we introduced a couple of pre-exercises that are intended to help with the storyboard, because I mean, we made the experience that the design sprint is such a powerful and nice and smooth process, but then at the storyboard stage, everything kind of like falls apart because people suddenly start discussing everything, and it feels very unstructured and frustrating. And we just wanted to introduce a bit more structure to it. So what we did was introduce something that we call the user test flow, and it's essentially a very rough user journey that we are kind of like workshopping with the team with post-it notes. So this is kind of like becoming the base and the foundation of the storyboard. We end up putting these post-its of the highest voted story on the storyboard, and then we kind of like construct the storyboard around it. And I mean, there are a couple of like in-between steps. So essentially, we're going from something that is extremely rough and high level, and like slowly add a bit more detail with every step. And then we are doing another exercise that is called breadboarding, where we are essentially just going through each of the screens and just write down a bullet points of like what needs to happen in there without doing any drawing yet. Because if you have been the artist in a storyboard session, you know how often you just have to wipe something off and start all over again because, you know, somebody had a great idea and now you have to somehow change everything. We just want to avoid that as much as possible. The other thing is as well, you have so much material from the concepts that were created that you can just take, you can crop them down to specific parts of the drawing. You can place them on the storyboard. So yeah, you can kind of like, it's almost like creating a Lego, like something out of Lego bricks. And the storyboard doesn't need to be beautiful. It just needs to be very specific on things like content, interface elements, and things like that. So, and that is quite easy to do even when you do it digitally. I mean, this is definitely an approach that will save you a lot of time and makes the storyboarding a lot easier. And it works the same way whether you do it in person on an actual whiteboard or remotely on Miro.
Thanks a lot, Tim. All right, everybody, we are we've already been streaming for 45 minutes, so I think we're going to end it here. We have live streams coming up every single week. All you got to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you're following us over on LinkedIn. Make sure you're following us over on Instagram. These are the places where we announce these live streams. I just saw what Callum posted there. Smash if you love working from your bedroom. Wait, that came out wrong. So we really appreciate all of your time. I hope you love our 55-page remote design sprint document. The only thing we ask for in return is tell a friend about our YouTube channel or tell a friend about one of our pieces of content. The more people who hear about what we're doing, the better it is for our egos, our very, very fickle egos.
Yeah,
so fragile. So we have a ton of remote content coming up, how to run different types of workshops remotely. If you've just landed on our channel, go back a few videos. You can see how we use our Miro board. You can see the full setup. A lot of your questions here have been answered by those older videos. So I guess all I can say is, oh, one more thing. Next Wednesday, if you didn't already know, I am launching my first book. It's called The Workshopper Playbook. I'm actually going to run out and get it. Give me 1 second.
I wonder where he has it. Maybe we'll see the boxes stacked in his apartment with all the books. He has been talking about this nonstop at the office.
So next Wednesday, the Workshopper Playbook launches. It is a book on how to design your own custom workshops. If you want a free copy of this book, but you have to pay for the shipping, all you got to do is add yourself to our newsletter right now, ajsmart.com/newsletter. If it's before April 8th, add yourself to our newsletter, and we'll send you a message telling you how to get a free physical copy. If this is after April 8th and you're watching this, well, there'll be a link in the description. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm really also super excited about you guys getting this book. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Have a great night. Stay safe. Stay indoors. I love you all. Thank you for supporting us. Tim, say bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Please, Callum, end the live